It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. We had everything before us, we had nothing before us. Thus goes on the first paragraph of A Tale of Two Cities, written by Charles Dickens. It captures the reality of the times 150 years ago when the book was written. It captures the reality of the times today. It captures the reality of the future. It matters a great deal for every one of us, especially for those who run businesses, for those who lead organizations. The business world today is affected by a number of events, both good and bad. These events create opportunities and threats for organizations. They pose challenges. How successfully an organization navigates between these teeming opportunities and challenges will determine the survival of an organization in the 21st century. Therefore, it's vitally important for managers to understand the trends, the likelihoods which can cause events, and how these events will impact or affect the organizations. There are some key trends that are likely to occur in the next 20 to 40 years from today. These events will largely determine, a little correction, trends. I do not like to use the word events, I'd rather use the word trends, because trends are likelihoods. They may or may not happen. They can have an impact on an organization in the short term, in the medium term, as well as in the long term. Therefore, preparing to face these trends will matter a great deal for organizations. There are some key trends. The first one is the resource crunch. As we all know, businesses consume and use a lot of resources. Some of them are enormously vital. When we talk about resources, we talk about oil, we talk about utilities, but there's one resource crunch which we do not talk about a lot, which is water. Before I start talking about the resource crunch which can impact an organization, I want you to realize the fact that the global population by 2050 will be anywhere between 9 and 10 billion. Think about it. At the moment, the global population is roughly about 7 billion. In the next 4 decades, we're going to easily add another 3 billion. Now that is going to put an enormous pressure on organizations. There will be more mouths to feed. There will be a greater demand for vital resources. They both create opportunities for those companies who can be innovative, companies that can come up with creative solutions to these problems generated by depleting resources. And they also create challenges for those companies who are or that are heavily dependent on these vital resources. According to McKinsey, a management consultancy, in the next 20 to 30 years, 40% of global GDP and 85% of global population will be in areas where the demand for water will exceed its supply. Now that sounds pretty challenging, doesn't it? Companies, businesses such as Pepsi or Coca-Cola that are directly and heavily dependent on water will have to think of some strategic measures in order to overcome this resource constraint. Take Pepsi Cola for example. It consumes about 5 liters of water to produce 2 liters of Coke. Now that's quite obvious, companies such as Pepsi being so heavily dependent on water. Think about companies that are not so obviously dependent on water. Information technology companies. IBM, for instance, uses enormous quantity of water to produce microchips. For a fact, its water bill at the Burlington plant in Vermont, in America, is around $100,000 a month. This water plant at Burlington consumes about 3.2 million gallons of water a day. Now that's a lot. Now what's the lesson? What's the underlying lesson when it comes to resource crunch? What companies ought to do? What managers ought to do? We talk a lot about employee productivity, process productivity, operational productivity. What will increasingly matter is resource productivity. It's basically the output achieved from every unit of oil, water, or power, or any other resource input, which will become central in determining a company's competitiveness. Managing resources will be a key strategic factor. It's not just about water use or resource use or costs, but what matters a great deal is how much productivity, how much efficiency, how much revenue, how much profit a company can generate from its effective use of resources. Now, moving on to the next trend that's vitally important is quite familiar: globalization. Is it a boon or is it a bane? Is globalization helping us or hindering us? A key question. Globalization roughly is about the free movement of labor, ideas, people, capital, technology, money, finance, culture, and so on and so forth across geographic borders. Globalization doubtless has created enormous opportunities for businesses. Globalization has also posed challenges. What's important for business leaders is to put the entire globalization speak in perspective. Globalization has been beneficial for many organizations. Outsourcing has become a norm today, and so is offshoring. Today, we talk about virtual businesses, virtual trading, 24/7 round the clock. And there are virtual organizations, there are virtual teams. Things that were unimaginable 20 years ago, we take them for granted today, thanks to globalization. It has transformed businesses, it has transformed the standards of living of people around the world. Consumers stand to benefit a great deal today. It's been an absolute advantage for several organizations. But that's just one side of the coin. The other side, not so obvious, has been a challenge for many organizations. Despite the advantages and opportunities created by globalization, many companies have also not benefited as a result of globalization. In other words, companies have been forced to commit costly strategic errors. Today, despite the globalization speak, some differences, key differences remain. There are cultural differences, which means that organizations still have to adapt their products, their services to suit or to adapt to local tastes. There are administrative differences or difficulties. It takes a lot more bureaucratic effort to do business in Nigeria than it does to do business in Finland. There are geographic borders. Countries are affected by climatic conditions. There are logistical difficulties, which mean there are infrastructure problems in many markets posed by geographic differences. They can cost companies a great deal. And there are economic differences. There is economic disparity in income levels, in purchasing power parity, in personal disposable income. And of course, there are political realities. Political realities can undo and do business operations carried out at the global level. Therefore, it's crucial to understand what it means globalization for business organizations before businesses make key strategic decisions. Let me give you an example. Sleek Audio, an American company. It's a medium-sized company which makes customizable earphones. Just like other companies, Sleek Audio decided to move its manufacturing operations to China, outsourcing. Just like other companies, Sleek Audio came to the conclusion that it could save costs, but eventually it cost the company enormously. Right from the beginning, the company ran into quality issues. The company had distribution problems because there were delivery delays. The company also suffered rising labor costs in China, which means the cost of manufacturing the earphones was becoming more expensive rather than being cheap. And apart from that, the general rise in inflation across China didn't help its cause. Eventually, Sleek Audio decided to move its manufacturing function, its manufacturing operation back to the US. And the company felt, the leadership to be precise, that it made a wise decision in moving its entire manufacturing operations back to the US. One of the reasons was there is an increasing use of robots in manufacturing across many American cities and states. Use of robots is resulting in falling manufacturing costs. Apart from that, the company addressed the quality issues. It no longer had delayed deliveries. Therefore, with a little bit higher cost, the company was able to increase its profit margins. I'm not going to say that globalization is good or bad, but what is important for business leaders is to understand that globalization provides both opportunities as well as difficulties. And what is good for one organization may not be so for all organizations. Therefore, putting the globalization decision in perspective is crucial. The next trend is the advent of new industries. In the last 2 decades, we have seen the rise of many industries which we did not even imagine in early 90s. The world has changed. The advent of new industries has created enormous threat for established companies, and they have created enormous opportunities. Social networking is a popular industry today, and Facebook has revolutionized the entire social networking business. Or LinkedIn, it's a professional networking business. There's YouTube and there's Wikipedia. Wikipedia has almost killed Britannica Encyclopedia, which was once a household name. It dominated the encyclopedic industry for many decades. Now it's almost virtually unknown. And think about short-haul flights, revolutionized by companies such as Southwest Airlines, EasyJet, Ryanair. And another trend in the advent of new industries is the cloud computing, which will increasingly affect the entire World Wide Web in the next 20 to 30 years. E-shopping. So these are some of the trends. Why is it important to understand the advent of new industries? As new industries emerge, they can sideline some of the established industries in an economy, in a country, creating both opportunities. The next trend, very important, is the erosion of trust. There is, as I speak, an increasing strain between the business community and the civil society. That's because of depleting trust between those who do business and those who consume products and services, the general public, the consumers. Now, trust is not something that is widely discussed in management textbooks. We realize the importance of trust only in hindsight, that is, becoming wise after an event has taken place, whether it's about the recent economic recession that ended in 2010, or we are still experiencing its fallout, or the recent hacking scandal generated or created by the News Corporation, the News of the World tabloid in Britain. Now, all these point to trust deficiency in the business world. Every time there is a depletion of trust, it can be adverse for businesses. Low trust environment is always costly for businesses. Why? Low trust environment generates negative publicity for an organization. It can result in high transaction costs because governments and regulatory bodies will introduce newer regulations, more regulations. There will be an increase in accountability, more costs, and costs will have to be passed on to the consumer. It doesn't benefit anyone. And it makes business difficult. The next key trend, this is something that is not likely to disappear anytime soon. It is something that will prevail in the years to come. Government protectionism. Government protectionism is hardly conducive to business development. It's hardly beneficial to business creativity. It's hardly advantageous to business innovation. But alas, business leaders have to be mindful of government protectionism. It can come at any time. It can appear in any place, affecting businesses. Why government protectionism is not good? 3 reasons. The first reason, protectionism makes domestic firms less competitive in the export market. Import barriers also increase domestic prices, which can result in higher costs for consumers. The second reason is that it costs a country's overall domestic production. For instance, an increase of $1 in protectionism leads to a decrease of 66 cents in GDP. And the third reason, government protectionism holds back economic growth for all countries. Assuming full liberalization in goods and services can help increase average real income in developing countries by 1.3%, while increasing the average real income by 0.76% in high-income countries. The next key trend, consumption. There is a shift in the global consumption pattern. Today, China and India alone are likely to have more than 1 billion people with an average income of $20,000 in the next decade or so. Of course, after purchasing power parity adjustment. Now, what does it mean for corporations? What does it mean for companies? There will be a huge, prosperous middle income group. Now, this group alone, about 1 billion people with an average of $20,000 in annual income, will have a growing demand for products, for goods, for services. The center of gravity has already moved towards Asia. That is where an increasing economic activity will take place in the next 2, 3, 4 decades. Now, that's just one side of the reality. The other side, people over 60 years of age will also rise in number. There will be about 1 billion people over 60 years and above. Now, what does it hold for companies, especially in rich or high-income countries? Growing number of older customers means that there will be a new set of needs, new set of wants, new set of requirements. Here is an opportunity to create more products and services for a new set of customers. And apart from that, what companies ought to make in the face of such significant demographic changes, investing in emerging economies, while at the same time business leaders have to be mindful of political realities in emerging countries. Political volatility is something that must be factored in when formulating strategies. And apart from that, a prosperous, growing middle-income groups in emerging economies mean that even luxury companies will be forced to offer luxuries on a budget. The next key trend is competition. Competition is not new. Companies have always faced competition, but the nature of competition has changed today. The global playing field is being leveled, meaning that competition can come from any part of the world today. Ask Barovier and Toso, a glass-making or chandelier-making company based in Italy. This company is about 700 years old, and the company has been run by 19 generations by the same family, but suddenly it's facing competition, low-cost competition from companies based in countries such as China. This company has built chandeliers, some of them standing 40 feet tall. A strong brand name in the chandelier making business, but now its survival seems a little uncertain. Now, such is the nature of competition today, again thanks to globalization. In summary, meeting these trends, tackling these trends, managing these trends will require leaders to formulate effective strategies, to know what sort of trends are likely to occur, as I said at the beginning, in the short term, in the medium term, in the long term, is crucial. Now, managing these trends require both management as well as leadership. In the next section, that is what I'm going to talk about. What's management, what's leadership, and why both these are important.